everybody, and welcome to A Heart Full of History. I'm Selene Castrovilla, an author of several books about American history based on humanity, and it is my pleasure and honor to share, get some feedback, and if you keep working at it, I can't guarantee that manuscript will get published, but you're going to make it if you keep trying. I think a lot of people get scared.
That's the key, is really working hard. My role as an editor is to work with the author, sometimes one time, sometimes never really one time, sorry.
No, I know.
A few times or many times or whatever to get it right. So to write a book, it's really a team effort. And, you want your editor to be sort of by your side and working with them and sort of nudging you to make the manuscript even better. And sometimes I learn a lot from the author, sort of having a dialogue. I'm not a big fan of editorial letters, never have been. I would rather sit down and talk. And that comes from being at these retreats and being at Chautauqua for 18 years. But really to talk it through and to really hear the author instead of sort of dictating my comments. And so it's more of a dialogue. And I think that really works.
Oh, yeah. It's organic. So much more comes out of the conversation. Right. Even when we were doing the final edits for By the Sword, we were actually at Chautauqua again, and we were sitting in the ice cream place there, and we were trying to figure out what the last sentence should be. And you actually came up with the revision of it.
I remember.
Like, yes, that's it. And we high-fived, and it was just the most incredible thing. So I think it's very important that people have to be open to comments. You're never going to get published if you don't accept comments. Forget it.
That's true.
True. I think with us, with writing about history, the most important thing is that we get our facts right. Mm-hmm. And I remember you told me from the beginning, the bibliography is the most important thing. We have to make sure we got the information, has to be the primary sources, and the idea of checking with experts. I was always on the phone with experts in different places. But I think that's very important.
But it's key not only just to have a bibliography and put it in a book, but as I've always said, through the research, it really comes the story. So, if you have a book that's set in the past and there's no rich details or, you haven't really done your research or talked to somebody who's guiding you, like an expert, let's say. That's really where the stories come from. In the very beginning, it used to drive me crazy when I get these comments like, oh, Carolyn Yoder, she's very strict with the facts. And I am strict with them. There's a point to do solid research. And that comes from my background of scholarly books.
Yeah.
And working very closely with experts, sort of respecting the written documents.
Absolutely.
And going out and looking at field research. You and I have gone out and done field research together. And so all of this is really important to put into the story. So it makes it more relatable to kids, and it makes somebody like George Washington come alive, et cetera, et cetera. So
absolutely. Yeah.
That's really where I'm coming from.
And that's key. I think you really were a pioneer in this, Now, there are a lot more books doing this kind of thing, but you were the first. You insisted on the humanity being in the books.
Right.
That's so
and we
important.
were a big proponent of, as they used to call it, crap in the back. But now, back matter is highly celebrated. But
it's very important. If for nothing, the kids need to see
books. It was like, what? What is all this back matter?
Yeah, it's true. I love doing the back matter because you can learn so much. We put the notes, and that way the kids can see how we talk about the process. We not only have the bibliography, but we put notes and places to visit and timelines, and they can delve as much as they want. And they can go back to them later in life. This is not just a one-shot deal to read these books. I'm so proud of them, and it's so thrilling to be a part of Calkins Creek.
The thing that's really great, and also in the back matter, and I think you started doing it very early on, probably in your first book for Calkins Creek, was how you came to write the story. What about the research really intrigued you or sparked the story, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So I will tell you something's kind of interesting. Years ago, I was doing book research on my own book on George Washington. And I was at this place called the David Library. You've been there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's moved, but it was over by the Delaware.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was sitting there interviewing a fellow who was going to be my expert And this fellow was in the next room doing research, and he came in and he said, "Are you Carolyn Yoder?" And I
Wow.
said, "Yes." And he said, "I just want you to know that I became a historian because of you
Oh,
and
wow.
because of the issue of cobblestone on Alexander Hamilton."
Wow.
And he was, he was probably in his early 20s. He actually went to Washington University, my alma mater.
Wow.
And it was great that we had sparked somebody so deeply that they
Yeah.
became a historian.
It really is
So
beautiful.
that
Yeah.
makes it all worthwhile. No,
I
in
think
one
you,
sense.
I think you've inspired many people, and that is the nature of our careers, that we don't really know the extent of all the
Right.
people we touch. But
Yeah.
when we meet somebody, that means the world. But
Yeah, it
I
was
can
just
assure
a
you,
fluke.
that is great, isn't it?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I love it.
fabulous.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that again, that's synchronistic. I think
Yeah.
when we say, we just, and it's the thing. That's the thing that really matters in our careers. I don't get me wrong. I like money because I need it to live and everything, but that's not my primary goal. My primary goal is the thrill of the chase of finding these stories about people who cannot tell their stories. They're gone,
Right.
and that's why it's so important we get the facts right.
Yeah. So you've taken it upon yourself to sort of do this arc of stories,
Yeah,
you started on the journey and then you got into George
that's
Washington, that
true.
is,
Yes.
and looked for really little known stories about him because, of anybody in our past, he's probably the most iconic and the most misunderstood. And so I think it's your mission, if
Yeah.
you will,
Yeah.
to make him more human and, more accessible to kids. And that's what we're all about at Calkins Creek, that these
Yeah.
people, we do a lot of books on people who need to be known. They're not known
Yes.
at all. But, people who kids should know about and whose stories are damn interesting.
Yeah, I think I have more than what I don't know what my mission is, except I think to show the humanity in all people, the fact that we're all, just because someone lived, 1776 or whenever, we're still the same inside. And that's the important thing, that history is actually humanity, and we're all linked together. And I love talking to kids and sharing stories with kids that show them that. And the new book, George Washington's Spectacular Spectacles, The Glasses That Saved America, is so human. And see, this story, it's one example of not giving up on a story, because I wrote it 20,000 times, and it was so mired. It was so bogged down in detail. The Newburgh conspiracy is a very complicated
It is.
thing.
I remember.
Yeah.
I think I saw a few versions.
You saw so many. And we finally gave up because it just kept getting, the more I had to explain, the deeper it got. It was like, this can't be for kids. It's just too complicated. And all I wanted to tell the story of was George Washington putting on a pair of glasses, because at the time he had to hide he felt he had to hide the glasses. He felt that he would be judged. They would think he's weak, that he would look odd. So he kept those glasses hidden. But meanwhile, his officers, the people that he adored, that were everything to him, that had been with him for the whole war, they were plotting to overthrow the government. They were going to burst into Congress and demand to get paid because they hadn't been paid for the whole war. And yes, they needed to get paid, but treason's not the answer, right? And so you could understand both sides. You can understand the humanity of it. But I wanted to tell it through George's side, that he was so shocked and heartbroken that his soldiers were doing that. And then after all the trying to convincing, it was putting on the pair of glasses, and they reminded them that how much he had been through with them, and and he was aging, and what he had sacrificed, and they all started crying and gave up because of those glasses. It's beautiful.
But the thing that comes across also in that book is that George is not the stoic general.
Yes.
He's frustrated. He's unsure of himself. He's embarrassed. He's vain. He doesn't want to put on the glasses. He's
Absolutely.
grown old. So the thing that I really liked about the revision was the fact that it really showed George in a lot of different lights. Not everybody, the soldiers didn't like him. They weren't persuaded. Usually you're like, you see these stories about George going, let's go to the battlefield. Okay, let's win the battle. Okay, George on the horse. But this was really George struggling. I mean, he was not having a good time.
He was struggling for most of the war because he had a million odds against him.
Yeah.
That's why I said,
But,
if we were, if
but,
it
but
wasn't,
the way you wrote it was very
yeah,
sort of tongue in cheek in a
yes.
way.
I know. I
And
love it. I love this new style. I want to write another book that way. Both my next book is the complete 360-degree opposite of
yeah,
that. But I do love writing that way. And I think it's so cool. I think it's relatable. Kids love humor too. It was all because I had to hand in something for a writer's group. So I said, you know
right.
what? I'm going to take that manuscript out. I didn't even take it out. I said, I'm going to write it from scratch. And it was at least a year after the last time I looked at it, if not
Mhm.
longer. And I started writing from that emotional thing about he had got glasses and he didn't want anybody to see it. And I was like, and it just started flowing. And it was
The thing
amazing.
that was also great about the manuscript, which is not always clear or obvious, I guess that's the better word, is that when I read it again and we worked on it a little bit, tightening it up and making sure the
Right.
spreads worked, was that I could really see it illustrated. And I could see Jen Harney, who is
God,
the
yeah.
illustrator,
Amazing. Yeah.
illustrating it, because I knew we've done a few books with Jen, and I knew that she would add like a totally element.
It's amazing what she did. Not even just the drawings, but the positioning of everything.
Right.
She has such an eye. I'm going to talk with her next week on the
Yeah.
podcast. Let me tell you, I was stunned when I saw that. It's amazing to see what she envisioned. We could never have thought of that. It was
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
No, and the cover is so sweet.
I
You
love
see George, he's in his glasses. He's not looking vulnerable, but it's just a very sweet portrait.
It is.
Yeah.
I think sweet's the right word. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for a copy to come in the mail today, I hope, because I'm going to Nerd Camp tomorrow. I'm going to show people it. So exciting. It's like your new baby, you know?
I have a
Love it.
copy, I think. I'm pretty sure. But
Well,
it came out very well.
oh, it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Calkins Creek. You have a mission statement. I read an interview that you did recently, and tell us about the mission statement.
Well, if I can kind of remember, it's never changed. And it is to introduce kids to a breathing and living past, where people are real and it's accessible and relevant to their lives, but also that it opens up the past to
Yes.
them. So not only we've done people who, as I said, need to be known, we've not seen their voices shared, or people who are well known, like George, in a different light. So that's really our mission, is to sort of make the past believable and also accessible,
Yeah.
and exciting, and to also introduce kids to people that they have never heard of, and probably most adults have never heard of, but whose stories really need to be known. And then also, as I just said, people who are well known, like Thomas Jefferson or George Washington, but in a different light.
Yes.
So that's sort of paraphrasing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I didn't expect you to rattle off a mission statement.
No. But we also, the thing that's interesting is we've always been expansive. One of our early books was on Bayard Rustin.
Mm-hmm. I love that book.
Yeah, who most people don't know. Now he's getting
Right.
But at the time, and I felt that he was somebody who was instrumental in America's story. He was the engineer behind the March on Washington. And we did some books early on Reverend Shuttlesworth and Bull Connor, which is kind of an interesting switch, but in sort of capsulating the civil rights movement. And we've done a lot of books on social justice, just because I feel
of course.
it's important that kids should know about. And then we've also we've tackled a lot of books on women, on environmentalism. So books where, I always say, like, let's take a book we just finished a book on Rachel Carson, who was an activist and a writer from a very early age. And, most kids want to be passionate about something, or are passionate about something. And so they might not like totally relate to Rachel Carson, but they relate to having something in their lives that they're passionate about.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. That's so well said. Exactly.
Yeah. If we can activate kids, I mean, some of the times they're already activated.
Yes.
that's really our mission. Basically, is really to see themselves in the past. And like you said earlier, and that touches on the humanity, like how we're all the same. And if anything's changed at Calkins Creek, we've sort of expanded our list to be more inclusive.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, it's your books are all over the literal U.S. map. I mean, they're beautiful, and they're a joy for anybody to read. For kids and adults as well, they bring everything to life. And whenever I read one, I always feel so like, wow, I just,
and they're beautiful to look at.
They are so beautiful. They really are works of art.
Yeah. We're very lucky to have Thalia Leaf, who is the associate editor, and she also does acquisitions, but she also handles photographs, does a million things.
Yeah.
But she's excellent helping develop a book and helping read a book and putting it together, et cetera, et cetera. And we also have Barbara Greslow, who has been the designer on almost all books since, I don't remember, 2007.
Yeah, I love Barbara.
And I remember once early on at Calkins Creek, I went to see Patty Gouch, because I knew nothing about books, and asked her for advice. I figured she's a master
she was the executive editor at Philomel.
Yeah. I forget what her exact
amazing, really a legendary editor.
Yeah. And she said, Carolyn, I know they'll read well because of you, but make sure they look good.
That's good advice.
That was a nice merge of design and editorial. So we've also expanded our list of illustrators, and so we've done some amazingly beautiful books.
And then that's another thing about you. You can always see you have that really good sense of who will be the great illustrator for this. You really are a manuscript whisperer and a book whisperer. You really are.
You're too kind.
It's like, no,
Barbara does help me on illustrators.
Absolutely, she does. But I'm saying both of you, she's amazing. I love her. Yeah. And you guys are amazing. But I don't know. When I think of you, I think of that Michelangelo quote when he said, I saw the angel in the stone and I carved till I set him free. And that's what you help us with. You help us carving out to get to
you're very
angel.
Kind.
Listen, I know that I probably would have been published, hopefully, but I wouldn't have done it as beautiful work as I did because of you. You've made me a better writer. And I really appreciate it.
But Selene, you worked hard. I mean,
that's the key. Of course, it's not enough to have
overnight.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, it did not come overnight. Yeah.
And most of the people who are successful are willing to work. I mean,
that's right. And work without any guarantee. Just the idea. Shakespeare said, "Things won or done, joy's soul lies in the doing." The doing is the reward.
True.
Getting published is like the cherry on top, but the doing of it it's I wish everybody could feel that thrill. I hope everybody in their careers feels that thrill of accomplishment.
I mean, you don't have to be a book writer, but another good example is Gail Jarrow. I mean, Gail Jarrow has been with Calkins Creek. Not from the beginning, but
for a long time. Yeah, absolutely.
But she keeps getting better and better and better, and she really is a joy to work. Same with Larry Bremner.
I love him. Yeah,
these are people who really are concerned about all kinds of things. Is it accurate? Does it read well? Do I have everything that I need? Will we work together to make it better? That's all it takes.
Yeah, I think all your authors, anyone's that I know, we all have that same feeling that we love getting it to that point where it's ready. It's just the most thrilling thing. And your authors are so lovely. I mean, like anybody I meet from them, we're always instant friends.
Oh yeah, that's good.
We get along so well. It's wonderful.
And most of them have repeated books. They stay around for a while.
Absolutely, because we want to go where everything's great. It's a best place to be.
But it's also just not editorial. There's also with Carrie McManus, the marketing department. There's also that kind of relationship. So the book goes out to a certain point and it's carried on in marketing. And so
and there's a woman who has a tough job. She has so much responsibility. I don't know how she gets everything done that she does. She's amazing.
Yeah, but I'm saying that a book is not just there's also production
Oh,
and
yeah.
making sure it looks good print-wise. But
So much goes into it. Yeah.
also the author has to be committed not only to the editorial side, but also to the marketing side.
Oh, I know. I was just tweeting or
You're
whatever
good
you
at
call it.
that.
You know what I did on Instagram? I got the starred book list review, and I was about to post it when I realized I had put it. I was typing it onto the wrong account. I'm like, oh no! So I had to cut and paste it all,
Oh,
take it out. I fixed it, but it's just it's so much work. Writing it is the easy part. What do you write? Yay! But then all these hashtags. I always feel like I'm doing a Horton Hears a Who. We are here. It's so hard to get through in these worlds, but I do it. It's easy to market these books because we love them. We're authentic. Our love is genuine. But the chore of doing it is it's not.
yeah, but some people aren't very good at it or don't think they're good at it. That's probably a better way, or they're shy or
Yeah,
whatever. So you have to find what path you can be on to
it's true.
promote your book.
Well, I know someone that we both know that actually had a book come out with you, and I think more than one now that came up did a pseudonym, and this pseudonym was very good at marketing online. So it's very interesting to see.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes, though,
Yeah.
hey, we all work it out. I think we have to take it, like the book bird by bird. We have to take it step by step, piece by piece,
Right.
and even word by word. When I go over a manuscript, I really go over every word. And Flaubert talks about the mot juste, finding that perfect word, and any
Right.
other word will make you nauseous.
Well,
And
you
I
have
sit,
to.
yeah,
That's key, especially in a picture
absolutely.
book.
Oh yeah, yeah. But yes, I just adore it. So if you don't love it, don't do it. So that
That's true. That's true. We've been doing it. I've been doing it for more than 20 years. It
yeah.
is,
So let's
it's a
talk
labor
about.
of love.
It is. I know your love is obvious, and again, you're caring for us all. It's amazing. But so tell me, how did you wind up with Calkins Creek and with Boyd's Mills? Tell us about your trajectory.
I went to graduate school in Iowa, which is
Yes,
a
I was
big
there with you. Yeah,
writing English. They have like a huge
amazing.
building to English,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah.
And then I moved to Boston, and I was living with somebody who was a writer, and I didn't have a job. So I had cooked all throughout my career. So I sort of was this quasi chef for a while.
I love that.
And then I realized the hours are not good.
That's true. Not for you. You're an early bird.
Yeah. So I sent a letter out to Hornbook, and I didn't get the job. And then I got a job at Time Life Books. I'll never forget this.
Well,
And I thought, oh my God, I'm working at Time Life Books. And it was to sell books over the telephone.
oh God.
And I lasted 3 days.
Yeah,
So
that doesn't sound like fun.
it was horrible. And then I got a job at DC Heath working at their division called Lexington Books, which was scholarly books, mostly professors at Harvard and MIT. And I was the editorial assistant. So I worked with these two editors who were both about to have babies. And so they couldn't travel or do things. So they'd say, hey, Carolyn, do you want to go here? And I go, yeah.
That's
It's
awesome.
young and probably stupid, but.
No.
And my boss at the time used to be the librarian at Yale. And he just was a really smart guy. And how I got the job, I'll never forget. I was in his office, and DC Heath had published Beowulf. And I was a big Old English medieval scholar. And so I said, if I can read Beowulf in Old English, do I have the job?
Wow.
He was like, well, yeah, okay. So I did. I got the job, and I stayed a couple of years, and then I went into another scholarly publishing company, and I learned a lot. I learned about working with experts and the value of research and the attention to detail, et cetera, et cetera. And then I wanted to leave Boston, so I applied for work north. And I got a job at Velo News, which is a biking magazine, which I'm not really a biker, so that wasn't great. But I got a job at Cobblestone Publishing. And at the time, they did Cobblestone, which is an American history magazine, and Calliope. So I got the job there, and I was the editorial director. I became the associate publisher. And we started 4 magazines, but solidified my love of American history, although we did one magazine with the Museum of Natural History in New York, and I loved doing that one. So I did that for 13 years. I thought I'd never leave, but I did. And then I came south back to my hometown of Princeton. And
where was Cobblestone located?
Oh, I'm sorry, Peterborough, New Hampshire.
That is cold.
Yeah, it was cold, right, and I was sick of all the winters. I lived there.
I campaigned when I was in college. I campaigned door to door for Gary Hart there.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I met Gary Hart. I brought him up to Cobblestone.
That's funny.
So I could have met you at the time.
Maybe we did meet. We didn't know.
Yeah. So anyway, I came back to where I grew up, and I worked at the New Jersey Historical Society. I had also been in New Hampshire, a director of a museum. So I've done sort of museum work, blah, blah, blah. And then because I've been at Chautauqua for, I don't know, many years, I went out and saw Kent and said, hey, you know, I'm kind of a freelancer now because I was a part owner in Cobblestone. So it gave me sort of a leeway to spend some time and figure out what I wanted to do. Awesome. I was still fairly young. So I started working at Highlights. And then after that, I moseyed into Calkins Creek.
Wow. That's amazing. So when you were with Cobblestone, you were going to the Chautauqua.
I was. I think I went twice.
Ah, cool.
I think I went twice. I'm not positive, but I had met Kent, who ran Chautauqua. I'd given a talk with him and George Nicholson years ago. So when I left Cobblestone and moved south, I mean, I left Cobblestone. I was still up in New Hampshire working at a museum. Actually, I think I worked at Highlights then too. So it was a little earlier.
Well,
anyway, I might not be getting my chronology.
Oh, well, don't worry. No one's going to fact check you. We're not seeing it.
Anyway, that's sort of how I came about.
That's interesting.
But I will say, being at Chautauqua for 18 years, you met incredible people who I've reached out to, people who are not really in the genre of American history per se, but who have been very helpful. So
absolutely,
it was invaluable to me. And
that was an amazing experience, Chautauqua. I went 3 times, actually.
Yeah. And I think that's where I first met Joyce Hostetter.
Oh, I think you met several people there first.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a magical place. The conference was magical. You know, it's a very cute setting, though, of course, no alcohol. What's that about? But
you can always do something about that.
I know. Well, right. I know, but it was just a really, you just came away from there feeling like anything's possible. You know, like it was just an amazing experience. But then it carried through. Going to the retreats was also that way.
Right. And that was an offshoot of when they stopped Chautauqua, but it was very helpful to me. So when we started the imprint, when I didn't really know what I was doing, I could reach out to these people, you know, one being Patty Gouch, and ask them for advice or tips or whatever. The first publisher, I think it was the first, or he came early on, was Stephen Roxburgh. And I really did learn a lot from him. And he was very willing to do books on Bayard Rustin or Birmingham Sunday or Black and White, books that were a little bit considered edgy at the time. This is at the time. I'm eternally grateful to him.
He was, he is a real brilliant editor also. Like everything he says, it's really getting a great lesson.
Right. Yeah. And I remember when I showed him Blue by Joyce Hofstetter, which sort of came about from a workshop I did on finding a story in your backyard. And I said, Stephen, what do you think? And he went, delicious.
Oh, that's beautiful.
He was a man of few words, but what he said made sense.
It's so true. Always the fewest words possible, which is great. That's important. I will say something about him though. When he was remember, I started writing the Lafayette book, right? George Washington and Lafayette, What Became Revolutionary Friends, which is, I would say, my most successful book. And it's a gift that keeps, everybody loves that book. Talk about humanizing two people. I wanted to write about the idea of this French kid that came here, like so determined to help us, just passionate to help people other than himself, right? He was cushy in France. Then George Washington, reluctant to accept, but he did, and then they bond. It's so unlikely. And I wanted to end with him getting with Lafayette getting shot at the Battle of
Brandywine.
Brandy, and I just had that vision. But Stephen was like, "Oh, I think we should do a birth to death of Lafayette." I'm like, "Oh my God."
I remember.
Was quite, and I was struggling and struggling, and it was a lot, because when you get to the French Revolution, it's very hard to write that in a way that kids are going to understand, because frankly, I don't understand. Everybody went insane.
Plus he went to prison and he went out and
It's
and law.
explained that why he went to prison. It was like why was he in Austrian prison? But so I was. Then Stephen, left, and then I said, "Can we go back to the picture book?" And you said yes. And then we did it. And it was such a beautiful thing to accomplish.
Yeah,
I will say, starts with a vision, and then we just sort of, for me, I see an end and I want to go to it. Do your other authors do that too? Do they see a specific end that they want to go to in something?
Sometimes, usually the end is the weakest part of the manuscript.
Yeah.
And usually it's because sometimes people or authors don't know how to end a story, or they rush to the end, or they're like, okay, let's wrap it up,
Yeah.
And that's where the back matter can come into play. For example, we just finished a book called Call Me Roberto about Roberto Clemente. And I know Natalie Alonso didn't want to deal with his death. The book is about him celebrating his heritage and his career. And it ends with him establishing himself as a great baseball player. And in the back matter, we deal with the tragedy. Sometimes it's not as clear cut as that, but sometimes it's just hard. And so that is something we always discuss. Or there's a lull in the middle, and the lull is so lully that a reader's not going to get beyond the next spread.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that's also an issue. But that's where it really helps to talk it through with an author, because you can really listen to what they want, what their vision is. And as an editor, I think that's just so important. And that's why I do most things orally.
Yeah, it's true. And that was what makes you so special to us, because you do take that time, and
I don't think any other editor works that way.
No.
Maybe.
Well, I'm not working with all editors, so I don't know. But I think most of them, if you hear my dog,
he's excited.
He is very excited.
I won't talk.
He's usually so quiet here. I don't know what he sees. He might see a squirrel or something. Very exciting.
Maybe he sees the swan outside your door.
Oh, I hope there's no swan outside my door, because the door's open.
But anyway, going back to Revolutionary Friends, that's another cover that is really sweet.
This.
And Drazen really got the love between the two. I mean, a very different kind of love. Like Lafayette looked up to Washington as sort of a father figure and revered him. And Washington looked on Lafayette more as a son, and they loved each other. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful art for that one.
Yeah, it really, I've never met him. So maybe I'll reach out to him. Maybe we can have a discussion. I would love that, because that book came out, I think, what year did that come in? It came out right after my house got destroyed in Hurricane
2011.
I think, my house got destroyed, and then I had to try to market a book when I had no place to live.
Yeah.
That was quite something. But that book has only gotten stronger and stronger. People connect to it so much, because that's that loving relationship. Nobody associated that with George Washington. And you always hear he was distant and this and that, but it's so special that he, of all people, a foreigner that he loved. And I only wrote it because I was writing about, I did write about Benedict Arnold and his betrayal. And Washington also loved Arnold. He didn't love him as much as Lafayette, but I would say that's another reason. Arnold was jealous of everything. He was a complete narcissist. But when he betrayed Washington sank down in the couch in despair, having the betrayal. And Alexander Hamilton said, someone has to go find Lafayette. Only Lafayette can comfort Washington. And I was like, why is this French guy the only guy that can comfort Washington? So I wrote the Revolutionary Friends to figure out my own question. Really, when I write my books, it's to satisfy my own curiosity.
Yeah, which is great. I spent a lot of time in Brandywine because I go to the Brandywine Museum, and every time I go there, I think of the art that he just captured at place. And I'm pretty sure he went there.
Yeah, you told me. I think you told me.
Field research. It was wonderful that he embraced the story. So it's a universal story as well.
It is. It's a story about embracing each other and just having a relationship, even though you're very unlikely people. I mean, it's so important for especially young people to see this these days. You know, it's not us and them. We're all human.
Yeah, and what it means to really care for somebody and what you would do and what you would sacrifice. And so, again, that's key to our books. What is the core message there? What can kids take away from it? What can they, I don't like to say learn from it, but what can they appreciate? And again, very, very important, how can they relate to it? Because most people think of history as not relatable, just so boring and dry and blah, blah, blah that they taught in high school. But when I was in high school, I had phenomenal history teachers. I mean, my one history teacher's father was a congressman.
Wow.
And we got to meet all kinds of people, Teddy Kennedy.
Cool. Wow.
Blah, blah,
That's
blah.
awesome.
She took us to Washington. Her father was Hale Boggs, and he was a congressman from, I believe, Louisiana.
Very
then
cool.
I took a class on social change and Russian Revolution. So history for me was always viable, exciting, relatable, just fascinating. And so that's really what the mission is. It's been my mission my whole life, is to convey that passion to kids.
Yeah.
And to authors at times when they're feeling blue,
That's true.
I can't do this. I can't do this.
Yeah, you're a part-time therapist as well. I know, you do it all. But, well, that's funny because I had the opposite experience when I was growing up. I found history to be so boring, especially George Washington. No one told me anything interesting about him. It's like, I just thought of him as kind of wooden, as a statue or something. If you told me I was going to write about George Washington when I was a kid, I'd be like, you're absolutely insane. I knew I was a writer, that I knew, but I never thought I would write about him. But then when the first thing I found out about him is that he ran a spy ring, the Culper spy ring, right near where I grew up, Long Island. I'm on Long Island, and you could have knocked me over. I'm like, what do you mean? This guy? And it was like, what? And the idea that he just never gave up. What another important thing for kids. He was defeated at the Battle of Long Island, but he still managed to save his men. He cared about them. He didn't want them to be killed.
Right.
He just cared so much, and he always figured out another way. Always. This is something that we must.
It is. I grew up in a town where he's pretty well known.
Right.
Princeton we have a huge monument to George. The Battle of Princeton, Nassau Hall was used by Congress. So we were always inundated. We had to go to the barracks. We had to go to the crossing of the Delaware. All right. Okay. One more time. And
yes.
So there was I'm talking early grade when I had the exciting history. It was, in high school. But, in fifth grade, it was like we had to go to the Quaker Meeting House. We had to go to the barracks. We had to go to the Battle of Princeton.
That's cool.
So there was, that was okay, like the field trips. But still, George was always this remote general, and so, it wasn't until I got to high school where he got opened up.
He never got open for me until I started. Just someone was a friend of mine that happened to tell me that. I'm like, gosh, and that remark literally set me on my path about George Washington. They told me that he crossed the Delaware, but they never said why. So
now you can come every Christmas and see him still cross the Delaware.
Yeah, but I mean, fine. But like the idea that he had to turn the war around, and do that. But you know how I feel. Crossing the East River was so important when he won the battle. He didn't win. He lost the Battle of Long Island. But if he didn't do that, we would never have been a country.
Well, the same thing with the Delaware.
He
was smart about when he was in a bad situation, like
very smart.
Out of here.
He did. Right. He was. That's why I don't think we ever would have won the war without him. I don't think it would be possible.
Well, that's probably true. But it still irks me that people will still say there's no books, there's no history books. History is still dry and boring. It is not. There's a lot of publishers doing really fabulous. A lot of authors writing very exciting YA or graphic novels or whatever. People should just open their minds and learn a little bit about what is going on in the publishing world.
Yeah, they're not looking at them, then they're just saying that. It's like when Madonna came out with her children's book, and she had the nerve to say there were no good children's books. Like, okay.
I don't know. She, whatever.
I just, sorry, but
anyway,
no.
There is a lot of exciting history, not just
so
at Calkins Creek, but at all kinds of places, which is great.
But you were in the first push to humanitize history, for kids especially. I learned from you when I used to go to your workshop. People opened up my eyes even more about. It's one thing to say, okay, I want to write this about George Washington, but you showed us passion. You gave us passion and showed us, could do it this way, showing us the avenues. And it's so amazing how when you look at a manuscript, you don't care about your point of view with it. You care about what's best for the manuscript. And that doesn't always happen, And it's amazing what you do,
Well, I come from a whole family of English teachers.
Yes.
So I think my mother.
Oh, your mother was quite an editor too. Okay. I remember I was on a retreat and you said, why don't you read it to my mother?
Yeah.
And so I was reading,
probably about 95 at the time.
And I was reading her what became Seeking Freedom. By the way, that is about some very unknown people, the contrabands.
That's true.
Very proud of that. It's an ALA notable book. I love that. I'm proud of all my books, but my God, that book, that was another, it was hard too. There were a lot of challenges with that book, but so I was reading it and she goes, no. She was like, really on me. I'm like, I don't, and She goes, do you want to sell this or what?
That sounds like my mother. That sounds like, I would read her thing, because I was on the newspaper and the literary magazine, whatever. And she would say things like, is that how you're going to say it?
Yeah, exactly.
Which meant like, maybe you should really go back and edit it. So,
yeah. But she was right. She pushed me to get it. And I did,
Well, she was very instrumental to the very end at 101 at my retreat. So
I know.
So that's where, it was built in me. I mean, all my mom's sisters, she had 4 sisters. They were all either English teachers or librarians. So when you grow up in that environment, and my sister is English teacher she's retired, but she was one for 30 years.
Wow.
It sinks in your brain. And also being on the newspaper and the literary magazine and the newspaper in college, that helps because it's a team effort. You're putting together a newspaper. You're trying to make it the best. I was actually the cartoonist of my newspaper.
Wow. Really?
Yeah, I just did a few cartoons.
Oh, that's fun.
And I did mostly illustration for the literary magazine. But still, seeing it come together.
Absolutely.
Is what's important. And it's the same doing a book, working with Barbara, working with Thalia, working with Nancy Seitz, who's the copy editor. All of us are devoted to making that book along with the author.
Yeah.
And being observant to what the author wants.
Yeah. It really is an amazing place to be a part of. Just love it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you have anything else you want to comment about?
I don't. I mean,
I want to share the letter that you found the letter that I wrote to you.
That's right.
Yes.
When did I find that?
Just recently.
That was fun.
Where is it? I have it here. Okay.
Do you have a date on it? I can't remember.
No, but it was when we were working on Lafayette.
Okay.
It must have been around 2010 or so. 11.
Yeah.
I
think
the book came out whenever Hurricane Sandy happened. The book came out then. I think it came out 2013, and I got destroyed in 12. Right. Okay. So it must have been like 11 when I wrote this, maybe.
Okay.
It takes a long time for books to come out. Everybody.
That's true.
So it says, Carolyn, when we met, I put my head down in despair. I can't write this, I moaned. You asked, why not? See, we just talked about that. Now we have our third endeavor, depicting an unlikely friendship with powerful results. That Lafayette's motto matches your early words is proof of serendipity, if not God. Because Lafayette's motto, look at me with things I write. I feel very haughty after I write a book.
Yeah.
but Lafayette's motto was, why not? That is, I mean, I think that's really interesting,
Yeah,
And
that's
then
true. And you know
last
what? I
line,
think earlier you said this was a letter from me. This is your letter.
it's my letter to you, and you saved
Right.
it. Yes.
Right, I did.
And you sent it to me just recently,
I did.
really like a month ago. And then the last line is, the rest is history. And then I wrote, cheers, good to see you. Because you always say good to see you.
I always write cheers.
Yeah,
I do.
yeah. And then I wrote, adieu pour maintenant. Goodbye
that was
for
sweet.
now. I remain your humble and most devoted servant, Selene. That's what Washington always, they all wrote that. Yeah. So, and I mean, I just think it's such a magical, like, circle. Like it's not a complete circle because the circle never closes. I mean, I mean, it's just, we evolve everything. And you wrote in that interview how history, it's so interesting because you said history changes. And history does change because our perception of it changes because we learn more and more aspects. And
absolutely,
that's why it's so fascinating.
And my my sense and my sensibility and my eye has definitely changed, as has yours.
Absolutely,
as an author, and that's what really it's all about, is to see people grow, to wish them well, to wish their books well, to get them in the hands of kids.
Yes,
I mean that's all that matters really in the world.
It is. That's why I everybody thinks I'm crazy. I run all over the place. I want to talk to as many kids as possible. That's what it's about for me. Oh, yeah. I was at the French embassy, the 200th anniversary of Lafayette's return to America. So I was at the French embassy in DC. It was very nice because my son was able to come with me, my son Michael.
Oh, that's nice.
I really loved sharing that with him. It was great because they put the kids in small groups. So I really got to talk to them like up close,
Yeah, that's nice instead of a huge crowd.
It's good, except you have to keep doing it over and over again. You sort of feel like a bird that just flew into a window.
It's perfect. I love that.
But I remember one of the kids, they were all great kids. And so they really know a lot about history because they're in DC, you know what I mean? Like, so they're being taught things. So it was really great. They knew so much already. It was great because I didn't have to tell them the basic stuff.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was, and there were fourth graders. Were they fourth? Yeah, fourth graders. It's brilliant. Like, just like so filled with energy. And then one of them said, yeah, we went on a trip to Mount Vernon, George Washington's home. And I said, oh, I love it there. She goes, yeah, well, we went to his grave. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. I said, oh, yeah? She said, it was fun, but boring, she said. And I said, am I boring? And she said, you are not.
Well, that's all that matters. I do want to tell you one thing. I have a very good friend whose name also is Carolyn, and she's a big George Washington fan, and she absolutely loves Revolutionary Friends. And when we went on the boat trip in his honor, she was just so enthused, and just to see the Lafayette, the man portraying Lafayette. And I told her about your new book, and she's like, oh, I can't wait to see it. So it's so nice that it reaches all ages.
Exactly.
That people are enthused. And I mean, she's a real big fan of Revolutionary Friends. She has it out in her living room, I believe.
Nice. So I said, thanks. Oh, I know. I mean, I love reading. It doesn't matter what age you are. You can always enjoy a well done book, absolutely. Even if it's written for young people. As I think the young people are the most important audiences because they're open to things. A lot of adults are just like, you can't get through to them for whatever reason. They're victims of their own experiences, sort of, not everybody. Some of them are very open, but I know that all kids listen, they're so excited. They want to participate. They want to learn. They make me believe in humanity when I speak with them, So it's really wonderful.
Absolutely. Well, keep up the good work.
I'll try.
And I think we have a book coming out soon, and I mean another one coming up.
Quite the opposite of
more along the lines of seeking freedom, but
really probably my saddest book I ever wrote. But it has a happy ending.
So, it does.
Yes,
it does.
But
keep up the good work. It's a joy to have worked with you and to see your books come to fruition and go out into the world, and to have you happy doing it.
Yes, so happy. Yeah. All right. And I will see you in person at NCTE.
You will?
Yes.
I will see you then.
And cheers. Thanks for listening, everybody, and watching. And being with me on my very first episode. So exciting. And au revoir.